Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Workshop podcast. And I'm really happy that as the first guest today, I have Joe Lance. Hi, Joe. Can you tell some words to the people who don't know you? But I do believe everybody know you because you're a legend. Who you are?
Wow. Well, thank you so much. And after watching that video, it takes me back every time. Interesting enough, as I was getting the audience prepped, and I don't remember jumping and turning around in midair. I'm too old to be doing that. Anyway, without further ado, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Lance. I've been very active in uh, the SolidWorks community for years. My background, I've been in the oil industry for over 45 years, and strictly oil and gas. My After college, I ventured out into architect. So by trade, I'm an architect. Did some freelance architecting for about 4 or 5 years, and then I moved to Houston, Texas, where I got into oil and gas, and really been there ever since. And I've had a very blessed career over the years. Just a real quick overview: 6 years of board experience, and for those next generation, that's drafting on the table. And back in the day, you really had to love that to get into spending several hours drafting on the table. 11 years of my career was dealing with 2D, moving from board to 2D CAD. And then the past 27 years has been truly an experience. It's what you call the 3D experience. So here I am.
So thank you for being here, Joe. It's really a pleasure to have you as my guest. Some time ago, while we were talking, just general talk, we really fast turned to a topic that people avoid to discuss. And we both decided back then that we should talk about that, and this is discrimination on workplace. And it turned out that actually a pretty big amount of people are experiencing some kind of discrimination. And yeah, as far as I remember, it started with me because I'm a female in a male profession. So
Yes, yes.
I was also working abroad, and there was a double discrimination there. But I was really surprised that you shared from your experience that you have faced that too.
Yeah, and that's interesting. It's almost as I mentioned to you that how did we get here? Because it seemed like it was only I don't know 6 months ago, I guess, if I remember correctly, that I met you in person for the very first time. We immediately clicked, just had something in common. We started a very casual conversation, just getting to know each other, and how quickly we felt like we've known each other for years because we went so deep so fast. And I remember when that happened, I paused and I backed off, and I saw an expression in your face. Not knowing you, I wasn't realize what was happening, the transformation. But after we talked further, I realized that you were relating where I was going without me being specific. So kind of, do you remember what happened? What took place when we started that conversation and it went so far left so quickly?
Well, from my side, it was because you said you're really happy to see a woman working with CAD because this is really rare. And from there on, we were like, yeah, it's rare and it's hard because when you're female in this position, still you have to put much more effort to be considered equal with the males in the profession. So it's this type of sex discrimination. You have to give more to be considered as equal. And from one side, it helps us build better than the rest. From the other side, it's totally unfair, and this can break you, and this can break you really fast.
And I think that's exactly what it was. As we were talking, um, for you to be where you are and to get there, the struggle and the effort, and the secret, and we'll get more into that, is that I I realized early that how ignorant I was to how ignorant the one that doesn't deal with this, how ignorant they were to what we're dealing with, and how much harder and how much more effort that you have to put in just to get here and just to be considered. It's huge and it's never talked about. So when we were having the discussion, it was the same on both sides, just that you're female and I'm black, right? But the struggle is just as complex and just as the extra effort you have to give to get the recognition. And there's just a lot more said about that. But that's exactly, I think, how we click so quickly because it's finding someone that you can relate to in so many different ways, not knowing each other, just meeting, and within a half an hour, there's so much there. That was amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's actually probably because I feel really close to the female champions. I mean, the males too, but in other conversation that we touch up in the champions forum, there was also a little bit said about this that they went through discrimination too at some point in their life, even if they are not now. There was a point in which they were discriminated, and people should talk about that. I mean,
Yes.
it's a hard topic. It's a bit tricky topic without harming the reputation of the company you are working in. But as minimum, I think they should talk to their human resources if something like this is happening, because maybe my opinion is some people even don't realize they're discriminating others.
You nailed it. That's that ignorance. Um, because um, so just to go back a second, it's it's so obvious when you showed up to this event and it's 99.9% males. I can imagine how you feel. It's like, where's the rest of the females? You and I know a couple because of being involved in the community where we are. We know a few, but it's still such a small percentage. Same thing here. It's that I can look around and it's pretty easy to spot me out of 6,000 people because it's only a couple of black guys, right? So those are some of the things that's obvious to us, but the ignorance is that we not talking about it is not helping. But it's such a touchy subject is that if I meet you, I'm like, hi, how are you? How's your day? In passing, it's like, oh, it's great. But do you really want to hear how my day is? You really don't have the time for me to take you through my day, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's actually correct. I remember I had a really tough surgery few years ago, and even now, but especially after the surgery, I was hating the question, "How are you?" Because it was like you just ask it. You don't care how I
Right,
am,
right.
and I'm not really good, but I have to answer out of some politeness. I'm good, but I'm not good. I was with chronic pain. I was on pain treatment. No, I'm not good, but you don't want to hear that. You're
Perfect.
just asking to be polite.
Yes.
And the same is with the day. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I've had times when I did go there with the conversation with someone who there was a tragedy that happened, and this is another topic uh, that happened, and someone asked me about it, and we had an opportunity to, and this was someone I've known for years, several years. They knew me. They knew me as Joe. They didn't know me as Black, the Black neighbor, the Black guy, right? So when I started telling him about my day and what I was experiencing, what's going through, he quickly realized, well, wait a minute, you're dealing with that. So again, because they know me or they know you, they don't see you as being one of the person that's being discriminated against because they see you as who you are, who they know you are. but they don't really know you. So the ignorance there is, again, how would they know if we never ever go to the depth of the conversation? But you're right. When do you have that opportunity to, when you are welcome to do that? And it's a fine line. Do you go there? Do they really want to hear it? Yeah, it's exactly what you said. But I think a lot of the businesses now, the companies, are trying to address that. I think that's great, but I don't even think they know how to. It's difficult.
Yeah, for sure it's difficult. And something else which we actually spotted at this point in our previous conversation too is in their tries to fix that, now probably they will go in another wrong direction, which is the reverse discrimination, like having a minimum that count of female, having minimum that count of black people. From one side is good, but that's actually not the answer, because they have to learn to look on the person and his or her skills, and not the color, not the origin, and not the gender.
Yes, that's exactly right. How many times have you had? I know we got into this, and maybe we'll come on this a little later in the conversation, but something you just said that sparked that, right? Is that you, when we had the conversation, I think shortly after you returned and you did something, and you mentioned that you wasn't sure if you wanted to do this or go down that avenue, but once you did, you found out that it opened up the doors to so many people, and you were like almost overwhelmed, like, wow, there's an audience that need to hear this. Again, it's like, it's kind of one of them things that's never ever talked about. It's forbidden to be talked about, and you're never going to come up with a solution until you open those doors and feel free to have those conversations. And I still go back to, you were like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to do this, um, but again, here we are. So you never know who you're assisting and who you're helping, because there's other struggles out there, right? I've had opportunities where someone come to me and said, Joe, I've been following you for years. You're such an inspiration, or such a motivation to me. And I had no idea. I'm doing something because I'm passionate about it. But more importantly, is I try with my career, pretty much, I'm dedicated to try to set a precedence where I'm been fortunate enough to work in a really good company, and there's just a handful, a small percentage of blacks. But if I represent the community and I show good face of, wow, this guy is not what maybe you were thinking, or whatever the case may be. But if someone else comes in of color, right, and say, well, wait a minute, I know Joe. It's not what I think. So that may open up a door for someone else that you had no idea was coming behind you. And I think I know, in fact, you're setting that precedence as well.
Yeah, in fact, the reason to want to make this episode at this moment is, as I said, discrimination can break you, and break you badly, can stop you from pursuing your dreams because it's too hard. And with this video or episode, I hope we can help some people just to stand up, find somebody to talk with, and continue on their way. There is an interesting story I read about why there are so little ITs female at the moment. When the computer revolution started in the early ages, most of the programmers were actually female. Not most, all of them. And at some point, they start dramatically falling down as a number and drop off of school. And when the research was done, it turned out that computers, the personal computers, were promoted and advertised as a man toy.
Hmm.
So when men were starting in the university, they were already ahead of women. And that's the reason they started dropping off. So one thing is acceptance on the workplace. The other thing is we should not promote something as purely female or male or something like that. What do you think about this?
I totally agree. I totally agree. I remember, um, I'm aging myself, but back in the 80s, we had one of the first female field engineer that came into the office. And as she walked through, all heads turned because it was not a norm. And, I had a chance to meet her and talk to her about it. And um, she really had a hard time and she ended up leaving because it just wasn't worth it. It was brutal. And again, that struggle, what the guys or what we think is joking or just having fun, you're having fun at someone else's expense, right? And that scars a person. So you're exactly right. It's like, you know, who said it should be a male dominated industry, engineers, right? Um, and I remember just the opposite. I went down at a manufacturing floor, and there's a female engineer, field engineer that comes in, and um, this particular case, it was someone just trying to be helpful. But in a sense, it was maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. I understood what they were doing. This female was going to pick up one of the tool, and he immediately went to assist her. She looked around and said, "I got this." Right? But again, we're looking at female and not the person that's doing the job. And uh, will we ever get beyond that with anything? Or do we look at the person that's doing the job and giving the credibility of what it's due of how the person performed the job and not categorize, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. In our field, let's say sometimes it happens you have to lift heavy things, but hello, if you need help, you can ask. I mean, everybody can speak if I need help to lift something, because, for example, I'm not allowed on medical reasons to lift heavy stuff, but I
Right.
will ask. And
Yeah.
this is not making me less good specialist in my area because I cannot lift 50 kilos, for example.
Yes.
Everybody, or at least there will be somebody that can lift it for me, and I can still do the job.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's so it's when you I think also when you did a segment before and you got such positive response, it's like the floodgate was open. Like you said, we have to reach out or make ourselves available to assist with anyone that's hoping this podcast will reach that person that's having that struggle of why am I dealing with this. You realize it's not just you. Others are dealing with the same thing. We experience this, so you're not alone. It's kind of like it's not talked about, but it's okay to reach out to someone and talk about it and to know that your effort is not lost. And if it's not with that company, maybe it's someone else. I can speak that the company could have in place that we have these policies and we have all of that. Policies are great, but unless it's implemented, and it goes all the way down from the top to the bottom, then there's still a roadblock because not everyone is on board with whatever policy you have in place. There's that one that can really hold someone down or make life difficult simply because they have a personal preference of whatever the case may be. And those are the things that needs to be addressed. And those are the things that you and I are trying to represent and we're trying to bring to the forefront. That it's okay to talk about those things. And it'll never be perfect, no matter what you are, male, female, black, white, it doesn't matter what of color. You're gonna always have those scribble, just that sometimes it's a little more scribble for some than others.
Yeah, actually, the interesting fact is sometimes, actually, pretty often, people are discriminated from their boss just because he or she don't like them. That's another type of discrimination, but it's still a discrimination.
Yes.
Uh, And the policies that you mentioned, they're really good. They're made with a good intention. I have I have done a policy by myself. I mean, that's really what we want to do, or the management want to do, or belief is true, and it's happening in the company. But maybe in the bigger companies, the control over this, if this is really happening, is it's kind of missing and it's breaking. I have seen it in, not in the company I was working for, but people that I know. I have read their policies of the companies, and I was knowing what's happening inside these companies on a lower level, and it was totally against the policy itself.
Yeah, and that's it. Having that one person that happened to be your lead, your boss, or whatever the case may be, and that particular the branches on that tree, it will suffer. Um, but you, again, you and I have been there. Work harder, and that's not easy. When you see it so clearly and no one else does, that's the difficult part. That's when you have to dig deep to not give up, because you know if you give up, you just because you're not getting the promotion or you're not getting the recognition that you need, that doesn't mean that you're not making an impact. It's a different type of impact, but you're making an impact because you're not quitting and you're hanging in there. And I've seen my part of that, and I continue that. And I hear so often, um, but things are not that way anymore. And I struggle with an answer for that, because things are just not maybe as blatant as it was before. Things are better. There's no question about it. But does it still exist? Yes, it does, just in a different way, in a different avenue. And there's a thing that I talk about. There's a look, there's a talk, and and with the generation thing, for me, for example, is that I can walk into an area, into a room, and I can recognize if there's a threat there, a different type of threat, a threat of, depends on where I'm going, right? And if I sense that threat, then I know I'm not welcome there. Depends on where I am. I may leave, or I opt to have a seat and enjoy what I'm doing. But you recognize that. And I think part of the problem with the next generation is that not having that history is good and bad, because we want to get rid of that, but then you have to know when there's a threat and how to address it. And that's with all type of discrimination. As you mentioned, there's several types. There's a male, female, there's the color, there's the dress, there's just so many. So this is not unique to any one discrimination. It's across the board. And I'm hoping that we're able to let the audience know that you're not alone. It is something that we're trying to address, as we're doing here. Let's talk about it. And that would give you maybe a little incentive and a little motivation to know that maybe you're helping someone as well.
Yeah, this actually remind me the origin discrimination that was in Germany, and the sentence that I was hearing really often. So if you hear that sentence, there should ring a bell here. And the sentence was, "You misunderstood because you don't speak the language well." That was, I mean, we were talking in English most of the time, which I understand pretty well. I would say I understand it excellent. I mean, that's my work language. And to tell me I misunderstood, sorry, you're
Yeah.
wrong. I understood very well.
Yeah. And that, yeah, that's a good point. But it goes back to, so have you ever had an opportunity to go there with a friend or a coworker, someone that were genuinely interested in hearing and understanding your challenge? So you say, for example, did you have a male friend that said, why do you think it's so difficult? Have you had an opportunity to just go there, right, without having to worry about trying to sugarcoat it, just be raw with it?
Mm, yeah, well, it's, I mean, people around you, they I think people are scared to talk on this topic. They're scared, and they're scared because, or let's say afraid. They're afraid that if they say something, uh, they may lose their job, for example. And you can see this in different ways, in many ways. I was in a higher position. I was going to the production, talking with people, and they always was taking the blame, even for things that they did not uh, carry the fault about. I mean, there was wrong instruction, let's say it like this. They made a mistake, and they were blaming themselves. But the problem was not in them; it was in the wrong instruction. And I can think you can put this on the other level. I mean, I think also I didn't realize I was discriminated for a long time, especially for the origin discrimination. I mean, for the other, for the gender, I'm used to that. It started from my school years. Uh, Luckily, this is not present anymore, but when I was going to a technical high school, there were only 5 spots for female and 21 for male students. So this was pure discrimination, and it was coming from the government itself. So I was used to that. But the other one, I needed really a long period to understand what was happening.
It's interesting. And I know I'm jumping around, but hopefully it's not too much. It's amazing you use the word you're getting used to. I think that's another thing that's not understood. Um, where if you if you're having a discrimination against you, you're having to get used to a lot of things. It's not right. You know it's not right, but you can't take on the world, so you adapt, which means that you have an additional burden on your shoulders to deal with and get used to and fight through it. And sometimes the water gets muddy because you can't see your way, or it gets the wave is it's too intense. You can't push through. It weighs you down. So you're having to deal with your normal job, plus you're having the extra baggage to carry. And this is where I can't go off on that tangent and go as deep because that's a whole nother podcast conversations. But those are the things that I would still would ask, what is it you're dealing with extra? There's so much more. And again, my ignorance is that me being ignorant of not realizing how ignorant you are to not understanding in depth of what we're dealing with. How could you know? So unless we talk about it, you will never know. So I get it. You're feeling for me, or you wish you can help, but how you can help is that the next time you see some discrimination of a promotion that you had an opportunity to get, you didn't get it, you had all the credentials, maybe better. I'm hypothetically saying this, right? Probably have happened, but it was obviously you should have gotten what you didn't. And someone come and said, well, you deserve that. I'm sorry you didn't get it. How you can help is that you can help address that. Don't just let it go. Maybe you should go to the person that made that decision and have a discussion. Why? What happened there? That's how you can make a difference. That's how you can engage and assist us or anyone. It's not about you and I. You see something, say something, or go and find out what can you do to assist with that. How can you be engaged? Um, I'll tell a quick story again. Back when I went to a trade school, a college, after my industrial drafting course, a professor, anyone that was did well, they had a job. It was a placement, and he said, "Joe, I have something for you. I have a couple for you. Go meet this guy Monday morning. Pretty much, you show up and should be good." I was very excited just getting out of college and going for my first professional job, and I was just really excited. I showed up, went to the waiting room, gave my name, sat for about 10 to 15 minutes, and the admin came out and said, I'm sorry, I was told to let you know that the position is no longer available. What? So, a long story short, again, that's a question for another time. I showed up, but I showed up black. And that was my first truly slap in the face. And I didn't understand it. I'm thinking, okay, something else happened. Maybe it wasn't that. I don't, there's someone else that was better qualified that they brought in before. So when I went back to the professor and I told him what happened, he's like, what? He's like, no, you had the job. I'm like, well, obviously not. So he contacted them and he came back and said, Joe, I'm really sorry that happened, but it's no worries. I have another position for you. And to make a long story short, that actually happened twice. And at that point, I was just, uh, it was deep. It was something that you just couldn't shake off and continue. And that was very difficult. But again, you can't stop. You have to put it aside, work harder, and do what it takes to get a position. So my third interview, that did pan out. Come to find out, the gentleman that was there before me with this company was a black guy. So the company already had an experience, a good experience with a black guy. So they were willing to say, "Oh, well, let's bring this guy in." And that's how my career got kicked off for someone that set a path for me. Again, to the audience, you never know what your hard work and your struggles will do for the next person coming behind you. And that's how we can help tear down that wall. Now, I know there's a lot unsaid there and a lot of questions about that, but those are just some highlights and things that we deal with on a daily basis.
Yes, actually, a bit earlier, you made a good point, which I want to put in other words. Part of this, that this problem exists, is now on later point in my life, I realized that it was error, that I was accepting that, and I was carrying this additional weight, and this should not happen. If there should be some additional weight on our shoulders, it should be to fight for equal rights, no matter the type of the discrimination. This should be our fight, not to prove to somebody that we are as good as somebody who is worse than us with double effort.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very valid point. It's yeah, you're right. Is that you use that negative energy that you want to just explode, right? Put it to use and put it somewhere else to push a little bit harder. Um, and we're talking about, most of the conversation here is about a workplace, but I'm going to veer out for just a second to show you, to give some example. Maybe the audience can appreciate this. Like, um, I'm a marathoner. I run a lot, and there's one thing. So let's use the podcast for example. Um, when I'm going to go into a meeting or a podcast or whatever I'm doing, I will typically wear black. And so this question is to you. Most of the meeting you've seen me and I'm wearing black. Why do you think I wear black in these meetings? Just off the top of your head. Any idea? I
I
never
think
put you
you
on the
like
spot.
I think you like the color. I don't know. But I
So
doubt is that.
So I do like the color, obviously. But so if I was, and I wish I had an example here that I can show you really, really quick. Let me do something real quick. So I'm going to try something. I didn't do this before, but let's just try it. If I wore white, then it would. You see what's happening with my face?
Yeah, you're looking
So
darker.
so that's a discrimination that I like. What I do with that, the camera setting is set not for the darker person. And there's a lot of discussion, so that's deep. But again, so if I don't wear the black, then typically you're not going to see me. So if I wear a white shirt, the camera's going to key on that, and I would have to focus it to set the focus to auto, so it locks it in order to keep it. Again, that's that extra burden I'm carrying, just so I can be seen.
Oh my, that's
But again, like you said, we'll deal with it. So I typically keep a black shirt here, so that depends on what I'm doing. I want to be seen, I want to be presented, so I do that. And more importantly, here's another thing. If I was going with this. I run a lot. I do a marathon. I pay the same fee that another person would pay, right? And there's photographers that are 26.2 miles, and you're hoping to get that perfect shot. Well, what do you think happened with my pictures? I can't see myself because the aperture is set to catch the majority, and the majority is of light complexion. So all of my pictures are typically too dark. So I don't buy them so I don't get my wow marathon pictures. But again, that's just to enlighten you that it's so much more. It's not just a job. It's every day. I go to wash my hands in the bathroom that have a sensor, and most of the time I have to turn my hand up because it won't recognize the backside of my hand. It's not enough.
That's
So,
that's
but that's life.
yeah, that's life. But I never knew that this kind of troubles you're facing. I mean, with the sensors, I do have also a problem, no matter that I'm white. But yeah, some sensors don't like me for some reason. I don't know what's the reason. Maybe I'm too white for them. I have no idea. But all these things and the pictures and
Yeah. So I mean, but
it's
again,
really
what?
hard.
Yeah, it does. But as you mentioned, and as you're thinking, well, wow, that's a lot. You adapt, you deal with it. It's like you can't let that. So to the audience as well, it's not that we're blaming anyone. We just understand that it's a little bit more involved and it takes a little more effort on my end. My day, the start of my day is much different from the start of your day. And we can go into that. Maybe that's another podcast. What is my day, 24 hours like compared to yours? And I promise you, it's drastically different. Um, and I run early mornings. I run a lot, so I'll talk about running. That's my comfort zone. And I run sometime extremely early, as early as 3 or 4 in the morning. I've lived where I live now for 20 something years, so it's not as much as a problem anymore. But when the first few years, it was very difficult because I would get the cops call on me because there's this black guy running in the neighborhood early morning. Again, am I a threat? Is it a concern? I wasn't the only one running. I was typically the only one at offices. It's funny, they got to know me like, oh, it's just you, Joe. Have a good run. Again, I have to be careful of where I run. If I leave my state, my country, when I come abroad, whatever, I have to be conscious of where I'm running. I have to plan my day, I have to plan my trip. Anyone has to do that because you don't want to go into high risk area. That's not unique to us. You know, or me, it's not unique. But I have to put in a little more effort to be sure I recognize what the danger is. That's just being smart. And I'm okay with that. But again, it's the extra stuff that you may not know about. It's the ignorance that how would you know? You haven't lived that. You haven't had to deal with that. You don't even know if I'm walking towards you on a sidewalk and I'm passing by and I speak, but instead of you speaking, you you clench your purse. you know, um, I just smile. um, Again, maybe I had a bad experience, but it's something that I have to deal with. It's not unique to me, and maybe it's happened to you as well.
Yeah, to female, well, let's say we have some other struggles, and the sad thing is that this is not related to race or region or whatever, and it's related to all females in the world, more or less. And that's, for example, if we dress too attractive, it's like we are asking for it, all right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's all around, and I really hate to hear, and especially when I hear it from another female, when she see a girl that is dressed really provoking. I mean, she liked that kind of look, and she has the complete right to dress and go half naked if she likes that. How can you judge that? I mean, who you
Yeah.
are to decide if she's looking for it or not looking for it.
Yeah, very valid point. I know you have a lot of female that they go to the gym, they work hard to tone their body, to do whatever they're trying to, whatever they're after, right? And when you work that, no different from the guys, you get buffed and you wear your shirt, whatever, and whoever you may be, you want to show what effort you've put in, and you're looking for that look. You enjoy that look, and you want to share it. Why shouldn't you be able to do the same thing? To your point about the way female dress, again, I occasionally I will, depends on what I'm doing. I may go for a bicycle ride, riding a distance. I live out in a country, and normally I ride early as well. This one path, it's pretty far out, and it's no traffic, which is what a bike rider prefer. Don't have to deal with the cars. And occasionally I would see a female out that's, and when you're riding in those conditions, you're wearing very little because you're trying to be as aerodynamic, and plus you're dealing with the heat, so you don't want to get too hot out there. And I specifically, one particular time a few years ago, I turned around and I caught the person. I'm like, I said, I understand why you're doing this, and I am concerned. I said, but I feel like I'd like to share my contact with you. So I'm writing, if something happened, at least you have a contact, right? And she understood, but that could easily have been taken the wrong way. But my fear is that someone, with being so remote, like you said, someone will pass by and say, well, she's out here dressed like that. What am I supposed to do? She's asking for it. No. What is the difference between her writing and I'm writing? I have one probably as little as she does, right? But again, it's you're telling me because she's out here trying to train for her try or her Ironman, whatever she's training for, that she's not allowed to be as free and as open to do the same thing as I'm doing. That's just so wrong. And
Yeah.
um, but it's we have such a. I hope that we reach this one to open up that communication, because there's so much to be said, and if we're not talking about it, we're defeating. We're not making progress.
With this, I totally agree. And well, I think we share a lot of stories. We share a lot of types of discrimination, also outside of the workplace. And my only hope is people just start talking about it a little bit more, start respecting each other a little bit more. And hopefully, this will change sooner than, because it will change sooner or later, but let's hope it will change sooner.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you for being my guest, Joe. We
Absolutely.
definitely should make another episode with you. We
I'm
will
looking
find a
forward to
topic.
it.
I believe.
I don't think there's a problem finding a top. It's probably a problem finding a topic for the open discussion, but I don't think there's a lack of things to be talked about. There's just so much more. And I hope maybe someone that's listening to this may have something that they'd be interested in hearing about. And I'd be more than happy to entertain those thoughts as well. So um, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for following through with this. I'm very happy to be your first guest on the D Workshop. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. And with that, this episode is over, and I hope to see you in our next episode, which is still in planning, but I hope it will be something good. Bye.